Hey guys, this is FluteGirl2406 here, giving you a brand new Thomas & Friends review. Back in January 2015, I went onto YouTube to see if there was any news about upcoming episodes. Instead of finding a new episode, I found this, The Adventure Begins. The second I read the title, it captured my attention, and the synopsis proved that this wasn't a new film. This was a reboot to celebrate 70 years of Thomas & Friends. So let's check out the 70th anniversary special, The Adventure Begins. So what's the story? The story is a new tank engine named Thomas comes to the island of Sodor. Throughout his time on Sodor, he meets new friends like Edward, Henry, James, and Gordon. Thomas begins to dream of seeing the world, but he runs into many mishaps, such as being coupled up behind Gordon's express, forgetting to pull his train, and almost getting into an accident with some troublesome trucks. Then one day, he sees James in a runaway with the troublesome trucks pushing behind him. Thomas tries to couple up behind him, but James derails in a cow field. Thomas then rescues James with Jerome and Judy the breakdown train. Later, Thomas's heroism is rewarded with a branch line and two coaches named Annie and Clarabelle by the Fat Controller himself. This leads to a wonderful ending of Thomas achieving his dream of seeing the world. Wow. Just wow. I never thought this would actually happen. Then again, we did see something similar to this in Blue Mountain Mystery. Remember when I said in my last review that Andrew Brenner likes making references to the Railway series? Well, this movie really nailed it on many levels, especially since it's the 70th anniversary special. In this story, the film not only made a reboot of the book Thomas the Tank Engine, but also 3 railway engines, which was released in May 1945. I really like the combination of these two books, though Thomas the Tank Engine is shown a lot more than the 3 railway engines. It's nothing bad since this is a story about Thomas's first days on the island of Sodor. It starts off with the story of Edward and Gordon, and then there's a flashback of the sad story of Henry, and then a brief mention of Edward, Gordon, and Henry, which all seem to take place before Edward and Gordon. It's a really weird placement, but it somehow still fits in the film, especially since the 3 railway engines came before Thomas the Tank Engine. I do like how in the flashback of the sad story of Henry, we see James pushing Henry instead of Thomas, like in the mono series. This definitely makes sense since 1, James would most likely be strong enough to push Henry a couple of inches, and 2, Thomas hasn't arrived on Sodor yet, and he would definitely not be strong enough to push Henry out. Even though some of the story placement is strange, I still think it holds as a dedication and tribute to when the first book was released 70 years ago. The stories from Thomas the Tank Engine are well balanced and the transitions are very good. Thomas and Gordon was very much like how it was in the book. It's a very good adaptation and it also had a nice ending transition into the next scene of steam coming towards the camera. Thomas's train was extremely good. I really like how they give an explanation as to why Thomas started without his coaches in the first place, since in the book there was only assumptions. It's actually understandable that Thomas would hear a guard's whistle and think that it was his guard. The only problem I have is that Thomas is pulling branch line coaches instead of the express. Overall, the adaptation was great, the scenery was nice, and the music was awesome. Thomas and the Trucks mainly featured the song Troublesome Trucks, which is fine by me, but I question how Thomas didn't derail when he came around the bend. I also still question why the Fat Controller was at Brenner right when Thomas came in with his trucks, and how he found out that it was Edward who gave Thomas his trucks. Overall, the adaptation was pretty short, but it was still enjoyable. Thomas and the Breakdown Train was the best adapted story of the special. It really showed Thomas's true character in terms of bravery. It also had the best animation and camera shots in the film. I understand that in the Railway series, Thomas didn't immediately go rescue James until he got the breakdown train, but this is where we see Thomas's heroic and caring side. He's really worried for his friend and he will do whatever it takes to help him, even if it means coupling up behind his train to slow him down, which actually reminds me of the movie Unstoppable. I also really love that we see how James derailed since Thomas arrived after the crash in both Railway and TV series. This adaptation was really well written, and the music and animation were stellar. I find it funny how in almost every story there's a character passing by Thomas, like Edward in Thomas and Gordon, James in Thomas's Train, and Henry in Thomas and the Trucks. Another thing that I really like is how Andrew Brenner shows how Thomas not only came to Sodor, but also became the best shunter on the island and earned a branch line. Every new person starts from the bottom and has to work their way to the top, and Thomas shows this kind of progression and journey. The film definitely presents a moral where if you work hard and do your best, you will make it there. It's really great to show kids that kind of moral. If you watch Thomas on his first day at Sodor and then skip to the end, you really see that being really useful takes you very far. The overall story is clever and heartwarming. This is definitely something to watch if you watched the show when you were younger, and the ending scene just gets me every time. It really shows Thomas's triumph and achievement when he completes his journey and achieves his goal. It makes me happy for him over his success and becoming a really useful engine. Now onto the characters. Thomas is definitely in character. His personality of curiosity leads him to dreaming of seeing the world. I think it's a dream that everybody has, and when Thomas works towards his dream, he eventually succeeds. Again, the moral of working hard and you'll succeed is what I really like about this special. He also develops into a caring character. I like how he didn't show up to the island with his blue livery, but instead a green livery with LBSC, or London Brighton Southern Coast Railway, and the number 70 on his bunker. The writers and animators really wanted to give this big tribute to the series by having Thomas designed like this. In fact, his design is similar to Christopher Awdry's first model of Thomas, which was made out of a broomstick. I know that the original livery of the LBSC E2 was brown and the number was 100, but here it's a nice dedication to the railway series and Awdry's original model of Thomas. It also answers the question of how Thomas got his blue livery and why he's number 1. Overall, I really love Thomas in the special, and the ending really makes me want to root for him. Edward is another character I really like in this special. He seems to be like the big brother to Thomas, especially when he's showing him around the yard and teaching him how to shunt trucks. I'm glad that he does get a lot of spotlight in this special, since in other specials, he only either gets one line or a cameo appearance. He's very wise and smart, and he's a great and strong supporting character. Henry is actually in character, because in the sad story of Henry, he was afraid of a few drops of rain. Yeah, his physical appearance may not be accurate and it actually is distracting, but it has no use to the story at all. It would have been nice if they actually did use his old shape, since they also tried to make James and Thomas accurate. However, what I want to focus on is his character. As I said earlier, he's definitely in character because he seems to be that one character who has terrible anxiety. Henry always tends to worry about things like the weather, elephants, and even chickenpox. It definitely works here because I don't think I would have wanted to see him in just Thomas's train. I think his role here serves a purpose not only for Henry, but also for Thomas. In one scene, Thomas asks where Henry is, and when he found out it was rainy, he tries to help him come out of his shed. This scene really showed how much Thomas grew to be a caring and friendly character. And as for Henry, he said he was afraid of a few drops of rain, but when Thomas helps him, he finally defeats his fear. This entire scene shows character growth and development in both characters, and I really love it. I think Henry does prove to be a good character and definitely shows some good character growth near the end. Gordon is interesting. He definitely has that character of superiority and boastfulness. He is rude to Thomas, but at the same time, Thomas was being cheeky to him, so he wanted to get back at him for it. He also tends to belittle James, which is probably foreshadowing his treatment towards James in James the Red Engine. After the events of Thomas and Gordon, he only appears at Tim's sheds, continuously teasing Thomas. I'm actually okay with this because later near the end, when Thomas returns to the sheds after rescuing James, he doesn't tease him. Instead, he's actually proud of Thomas. This is similar to the ending of Thomas in the Breakdown Train, where he actually passes by Thomas, whistling happily to him. I think that this was really nice to see for once from Gordon. He's definitely a character and resembles the usual superior Gordon that we normally see. James is really intriguing, and it's not just his character, it's his livery. In Season 1, James was in his red livery, but in The Adventure Begins, he's in his original black livery. It's so accurate to how it was originally in the Railway series, where James was in his black livery before his accident. James is still a boastful character. but his karma gets back at him when he ignores his brakes not working and gets into an accident. This foreshadowing kind of gives the ending away, but it does help build up the events of the climax. I also like how James gains his love for his red paintwork near the end. I think the accuracy of James' delivery really stood out for this special. I'm glad that they tried to make this film as accurate to the series as possible. Annie and Clarabelle have a really nice role in this special. I'm glad that they get more spotlight compared to the book where they first appeared at the end. It's also really nice to see how they met Thomas and grew a relationship with him. They seem to act like the motherly figure to Thomas and really shows how he chose them to be his coaches for his branch line. It's another really good supporting role for this film. Jerome and Judy are very similar to Rocky and Merrick, but better. When they are called to emergency, they are awake and alert. I think these characters set a good example to the importance of an emergency. This is a good lesson to kids. I also like how they're the same breakdown train as the one in the book, including the orange coach, but with faces, though the orange coach doesn't have a face. It's a nice addition to the film, and it really shows the importance of an emergency. Glenn is kind of mixed. He doesn't have much character except for the fact that he's happy he's leaving behind a legacy and passing the torch of handling a branch line to an engine who will take good care of it. I'm glad that the history of the coffee pot is mentioned since it was only mentioned in the Island of Sodor, its people, history, and railways, as well as the Railway series surprise packet. It's a really cool addition by railway consultant Sam Wilkinson and answers the question of why Thomas wasn't number 1. I'm kinda sad he didn't get more spotlight in this film, and his whereabouts after his special were unanswered, but at least we'll see him in season 20 in the episode The Christmas Coffee Pot, in which Glenn gets restored. Spoilers! I think Glenn is an interesting character. I'm looking forward to seeing more of him in the future. Now on to the music, animation, and cinematography. The animation by ARC Productions is a huge step up compared to Tale of the Brave. The rendering is better, the modeling is better, especially the reflection on the boilers, which is similar to the model series, and the faces are hilarious at times. There's also an improvement in the lighting and rain effect. Now, is the animation perfect? Not really. There are a couple of weird continuity errors here and there are tankers that disappear and reappear. For example, there's a scene of James puffing by Gordon and you briefly see his red livery. Foreshadowing much? There's also a scene where Thomas is looking out at Knapper Station and an engine is passing by. Gordon is next to Thomas, Gordon is in front of Edward, Thomas is in front of James, and Henry is coming towards Thomas when Thomas is pulling out of the station. So who was the engine passing by? Was it Markland? Huh. I also want to talk about the cinematography. Oh my goodness, I'm obsessed with the cinematography in this film. The camera shots are just incredible. Director Don Spencer is unique when it comes to using panning shots. He uses these shots to not only show the beauty of Sodor, but also introduce characters. Don Spencer loves introducing characters by showing their wheels, such as the panning shot of James's wheels to reveal James, and the panning shot of Thomas's wheels to reveal Thomas. There's another shot of James's wheels derailing, and I think it's one of the best shots in the film. Don Spencer also really loves movie shots of an engine passing by, such as Thomas working in the yard, which is another one of the best shots in the film. The end credits is also a great addition and a perfect tribute to the Railway series, in which they show illustrations from the original books. Overall, animation is incredible and the cinematography is amazing. I think Don Spencer and ARC Productions did an impeccable job with making this film as accurate and cinematically amazing as possible. The music is also very nostalgic. There's a lot of recompositions by Peter Hartshorn of the original themes by Junior Campbell and Mike O'Donnell. This includes character themes like Thomas's theme, Edward's theme, and definitely the Runaway theme. It really brought back a lot of memories and was a really nice tribute to the TV series. I also really liked the songs that were added into the special. Troublesome Truck, sung by Robert Hartshorn, was a really nice addition, and I actually prefer this version more than the original. Really Useful Engine was a perfect addition to the film. However, it has a weird place the first time it's heard. Instead of Thomas's first day, the song Really Useful Engine is playing, but Thomas is not doing well in the yard. It's just out of place. Well, what makes up for it is at the end where there's a reprise of the song and Thomas is puffing on his branch line. This is a great placement for the song because Thomas worked so hard to be really useful and finally achieved his dream at the end. It's inspiring and a perfect end to a long, difficult journey. So what are my final thoughts on this film? Well, there are a couple flaws here and there, but critically and personally, it is hands down the best Thomas film. There is just so much that is clever and impeccable in this film. Animation, music, history, story, cinematography, and the characters. The journey that Thomas took is inspiring and shows incredible perseverance, and the ending is just heartwarming because it really shows what it takes to be a really useful engine. On that note, thank you all for watching my review. Leave a comment on your thoughts on the review and the film in the comment section below, and hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more of these reviews. This is FluteGirl2406 signing off.
But who will fetch our coaches for us, sir? Tender engines are not meant to shunt.
I don't know, Gordon. Perhaps you'll have to fetch your own until I can get another small engine like Thomas.
But...